Yesterday, Hamas announced that they have agreed to a ceasefire proposal put forward by Egypt and Qatar. Despite the military efforts in Rafah, the Israeli government did confirm they'll be reviewing the terms of the deal. This morning, former hostage negotiator Gershon Baskin joined us to explain the specifics of the proposal, the ongoing war effort, and the push for elections in Israel in 2024.
Hamas published it. It's 4 pages long. It's in Arabic. There have been translations put out both in English and in Hebrew already. And we don't have to go into all the details. The bottom line of the plan is that over an extended period of 3 chunks of 42 days, there would be stages of Israeli withdrawal or redeployment in Gaza, eventually withdrawal out of Gaza, an end of hostilities, a ceasefire, and the release of Israeli hostages in exchange for a very large number of Palestinian prisoners. At the end of the 3 stages of the proposal, we would find ourselves at the end of the war, essentially with guarantees. I use the word very lightly because no one can really guarantee to Hamas that Israel will not invade Gaza again, but with some form of guarantees that the war, in fact, would end. The biggest problem of the proposed agreement is that Hamas will not agree to anything that does not end the war, and Israel will not agree to anything that does end the war. And this is the real problem of the proposed agreement right now. Israel can talk about that Hamas is not going to release all the living prisoners first. It'll be a mix of living and dead hostages, not prisoners. But this is all on the margins. The essential bottom line is that Israel refuses to end the war and Hamas won't agree to anything that won't end the war. That's really what it's all about. And our major problem is that ending the war without having a political plan on the table and discussed by our neighbors, including the Palestinian people themselves, means that the war ends with Hamas in place in Gaza. And that should be, for all of us, a non-starter. But the problem is really that Netanyahu and his government have refused to deal with any political day after scenarios. And therefore, the only option for Israel under Netanyahu is to remain in Gaza for as long as possible, which means keeping the war going for as long as possible. And that's why we saw the incursion into Rafah this morning. Even if it was limited, it could have been a response to the Hamas attack against Israeli soldiers from Rafah 2 days ago, in which 4 soldiers were killed and 9 others were wounded, some of them very seriously. But I think it was more an answer to the Hamas stating that they agreed to the proposal, and this is Netanyahu's way of sabotaging it. I shouldn't say Netanyahu and the war cabinet, because there were no dissenting voices in the war cabinet. Yeah, maybe the threat of going into Rafah pushed Hamas to make the final decision, but I think it was more that they got assurances through, I understand, through Bill Burns, the head of the CIA, that the Americans would guarantee that if they entered into a temporary ceasefire, it would become permanent. I think that's much more what it's about. In my view, the Israelis have been using this statement that only military pressure will free the hostages, and we're now 7 months into the war and it hasn't happened. Israel has succeeded in rescuing 3 hostages through military actions. Many more have been killed because of military operations, either directly from Israeli bombing or from Hamas executions. I think the surest way to get the hostages killed is to continue the war. A majority, more than 2/3 of Israelis want elections in 2024. Until now, to this date, the majority of those who want elections in 2024 say they should only happen after the war ends. But more and more Israelis are beginning to understand, particularly after last night, that Netanyahu has no intention of ending the war, which means that we won't have elections in 2024. So I believe that we will see increased demonstrations and more determination within those demonstrations to cross lines of good behavior that Israelis normally demonstrated at demonstrations. Demonstrations in Israel are usually amazingly passive. And I think we're going to witness a change of that. I think we're going to see a stepping up from the hostage families also.